Caleb Dunn built towers across Orlando, but the one thing he couldn't rebuild was a broken past. At 42, this charming real estate CEO seemed to have it all, except peace. That changed the moment a boy in a ragged backyard pointed a chisel toward the sky and yelled, "Dad, look!" Caleb froze. The boy, Finn, carved tiny wooden chairs with a talent too raw to ignore, and eyes too familiar to deny. What began as a walk past his old property became a journey into buried truths. Caleb hadn't seen Maya in 10 years. Now her son stood before him, carving what his heart could never say. Haunted by regret, Caleb discovers a painful secret. Maya never left. She was pushed away by someone close. As Caleb uncovers lies, bonds with Finn, and builds something deeper than real estate, one small wooden chair becomes a symbol of forgiveness and fatherhood. But when a greedy relative tries to cut him out of Finn's life forever, Caleb must decide: walk away again, or finally fight for the family he never knew he had. Will a boy's gift carve a path back to love? Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold. The sun beat down over Orlando like it had something to prove. Caleb Dunn stood by the wide, spotless windows of his mansion, staring at his own reflection in the glass. 42 years old, tailored suit, the kind of jawline that once sold magazine covers, but his eyes looked tired. Not from work, from silence. Regret. Behind him, the room buzzed with the low hum of wealth. Clean marble floors, art worth more than his first 5 houses, and not a soul to share it with. He sipped black coffee, then tossed it in the sink, untouched. Outside, his estate rolled out in green waves, lawns, fountains, symmetry. But beyond the property line, the world changed. A narrow patch of wild grass, fenced only halfway, and a crooked old shed still standing like it refused to give up. He used to play there as a kid. He hadn't stepped into that yard in years. He was about to turn away when something moved. A boy, maybe 9, crouched low in the weeds with a chunk of wood balanced on his knees, a pocket knife in his hand. His brow furrowed, lips pressed tight in concentration. Then, "Dad, look!" Caleb's chest stopped. The boy waved the carved piece toward him, eyes lit up with excitement. "Dad, I got the legs even!" Caleb stepped back from the window as if he'd been hit. The coffee cup he'd tossed rattled in the sink. That wasn't possible. He flung open the patio doors, crossing the stone path with long, uneven strides. "Hey, kid, wait!" The boy looked up, surprised. He had sawdust in his hair, and his shirt had paint smudges. He didn't look scared, just confused. "I, thought you were someone else," Caleb said, slowing. "That thing you made, let me see." The boy held it out. It was a tiny chair, rough but balanced, with small notches where he'd tried to carve in initials. CD, his own. Caleb's knees almost buckled. "Did your mom help you with this?" he asked quietly. The boy tilted his head. "Nah. I made it for her birthday. She says we don't need to buy things to show love." Caleb blinked. "What's your name?" "Finn." The name knocked something loose in his brain. A letter. No, more than one. Letters he never read. Letters from Maya. He swallowed hard. "Finn, where do you live?" The boy pointed toward the edge of the yard. "Back there. That blue house with the cracked door. We moved in last year." Caleb glanced toward the house. Faded paint, no curtains, but something else, something older than paint, stirred in him. "Does your mom—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Just then, a voice rang out. "Finn, time to wash up!" The boy turned. "Coming, Mom!" Maya. He hadn't heard that voice in a decade. Caleb watched Finn run off, his little hand still curled around the tiny wooden chair. He stood frozen, the wind catching his jacket. His pulse thundered in his ears. Back inside, Ruth, his aunt, sat in the reading room, glasses low on her nose, sipping tea like a queen. "Did you know," Caleb said, entering stiffly, "that someone's living on the old lot?" Ruth didn't flinch. "People rent, Caleb. Not your concern. Does the name Maya mean anything to you?" She set the cup down gently. "It used to. She has a son." Ruth's eyes sharpened. "Let it go. That woman was trouble. Always was." Caleb's voice dropped. "That kid called me Dad." Ruth stood abruptly. "You think she'd tell you that after all these years? If it were yours, she would have come forward." He stared at her, seeing through the perfect makeup and pearls. "Unless someone made sure I never saw her letters." Her silence was louder than a confession. Outside, the boy's tiny wooden chair sat on the porch like a symbol, a memory carved in pine, a truth that refused to stay buried. Caleb walked back to the window, heart hammering. "Dad, look!" He could still hear it. The next morning, Caleb stood by the window again, gripping a mug of reheated coffee. But this time, he wasn't thinking about quarterly earnings or expansion plans. His eyes were fixed on the shed at the edge of the property and the boy who had called him Dad. Finn was out there again, crouched in the dirt, carving something new. The sun caught the edge of his chisel, flashing with each precise stroke. Caleb watched in silence, drawn in. A quiet knock behind him. Ruth entered without waiting. "You missed your call with Zurich," she said, her tone clipped. "Shall I reschedule?" Caleb didn't look away from the window. "No, cancel it." Ruth blinked. "You're skipping an international merger for... what, that boy again?" Caleb turned, voice calm but cold. "His name is Finn." "He's not yours," she said, folding her arms. "You would have known." "Maybe I would have," he said evenly, "if someone hadn't intercepted the truth." Ruth's eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. She simply walked out, heels clicking like gunshots against the marble. Outside, Finn stood and held up a small piece of wood shaped like a bird. He grinned. Caleb couldn't help it. He stepped outside. As he approached the fence line, Finn looked up, surprised but not afraid. "Back again, Mr. Fancy Shoes?" Finn joked. Caleb chuckled. "Guess I am. What are you working on today?" "A sparrow," Finn said proudly. "My mom says they're small but brave." Caleb nodded. "Can I sit?" Finn shrugged. "Sure. Just don't mess up the paint bucket." Caleb sat cross-legged in the grass, watching the boy's hands work. The movements were careful, practiced, like someone twice his age. "Who taught you this?" he asked softly. "My mom, mostly, but I learned a lot just by doing it wrong first," Finn said, then smiled. "Sometimes mistakes make it cooler." The words hit Caleb harder than expected. "Did your dad ever—" "I don't have a dad," Finn said quickly. "It's just me and Mom. Always has been." Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say that wouldn't tear something loose. Finn suddenly leaned over and rummaged in an old shoebox beside him. "Want to try carving something? Here, use this one. It's sharper." Caleb took the knife, hesitating. He hadn't held a carving tool since he was a kid, but as his fingers wrapped around the wooden handle, something old and familiar stirred, a memory of his own father, showing him how to shape pine into a canoe. He took a breath and dragged the blade across a block, clumsy but steady. Finn watched, nodding. "Not bad," the boy said. "You got good hands." The compliment sat heavy in Caleb's chest. Suddenly, a screen door creaked from the little blue house. A woman stepped out, shielding her eyes from the sun. Her figure was leaner, her posture stiffer, but the voice was unmistakable. "Finn, don't bother." She froze when she saw who he was sitting beside. Caleb rose slowly. "Hello, Maya." Her expression tightened. "You have no right to be here." "I didn't know, Maya," he said, stepping closer. "Not until yesterday." She folded her arms. And now what? You think you can just walk back in after 10 years? No, Caleb said quietly. I just want to know the truth. She looked at Finn, who stood watching them both, confusion in his eyes. I sent letters, Maya said, after you left. I begged for you to talk to me. Then Ruth showed up, told me you hated kids, told me never to contact you again. Caleb felt the ground shift beneath him. I never got a single letter. Maya's voice cracked. I thought you didn't care. Caleb's jaw clenched. I cared. I still do. Behind them, Finn held the tiny wooden bird between his fingers. Did you guys know each other or something? Maya swallowed hard. Yeah, sweetheart. A long time ago. Finn looked between them, piecing it together in silence. Then, gently, he extended the bird toward Caleb. Here, you can finish it. Caleb took it, heart aching. The small bird rested in his palm, unfinished, like them. He looked at Maya. Let me help, even if it's just with this. She didn't speak, but she didn't turn away. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt like maybe, just maybe, something broken could still be carved into something new. The next few days blurred for Caleb, not in meetings or boardrooms, but in the grass by the crooked shed, beside a boy who didn't know he was his own flesh and blood. Every morning, Finn was out there before the dew dried, and every morning Caleb found a reason to join him. Sometimes he carved, sometimes he just watched, and sometimes, when the boy wasn't looking, he studied the curve of his cheek, the squint of concentration, details that echoed back to Caleb's own childhood mirror. Hey, Finn said one morning, holding up a carving. Guess what this is? Caleb tilted his head. Dog? Dude, Finn groaned, laughing. It's a fox. Can't you see the tail? Caleb laughed too. I was close. Finn shook his head. You're hopeless, man. The way he said it made Caleb smile. Not just for the words, but for the way they landed, with comfort, like family. That afternoon, Caleb stood on the sidewalk in front of the blue house, a small box under his arm. Maya answered the door cautiously. I'm not here to fight, he said, voice steady. Just wanted to give you something. He handed her the box. Inside, 3 small carving tools, refinished handles, newly sharpened. These were mine, he said. I thought Finn might like them. Maya didn't say anything at first, just stared at the tools like they were relics from another lifetime. I'm not trying to make this harder, Caleb added. I just want to do something right for once. She stepped aside. You'd better come in. The house was clean but small. A cracked picture frame leaned on a shelf, and a bowl of half-peeled apples sat on the counter. He's at a friend's, Maya said, pouring coffee without asking. They're painting birdhouses today. Caleb sat at the small kitchen table. He's got a gift, he said quietly. She glanced at him. He's got more than that. He's got heart. He doesn't quit. Even when I couldn't afford proper wood, he carved with old fence scraps. He looked down. I wish I'd been there. Maya's hands paused. You don't get to rewrite the past, Caleb. I'm not trying to. I just didn't know there was anything to come back to. She leaned on the counter, arms crossed. Ruth made sure of that. What did she say? That you'd moved on, that you never wanted children, that you'd send lawyers if I didn't disappear. Caleb's hands clenched. I never said any of that. I never would have. I know that now, Maya said, but back then, I believed her. I had to protect Finn. They sat in silence, the air between them heavy, but not hostile. Finally, Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unrolled it slowly, a tiny wooden canoe, worn smooth at the edges. This was the first thing I ever carved with my dad, he said. It's not much, but it's what got me started. Maya softened. You kept it all these years? Yeah, Caleb nodded. It reminded me who I used to be. She walked over, lifted the canoe, and studied the curve of the grain. "You really want to help?" she asked. "More than anything. There's a woodcraft fair next weekend," she said. "He's been working on a piece to enter, but we can't afford the entry fee." Caleb nodded. "I'll cover it, quietly. I don't want him to know it's from me, not yet." Maya looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because I want him to believe in himself before he believes in me." She didn't smile, but something in her posture softened. She nodded once, then picked up the tiny canoe again. As Caleb left, he glanced back once. Through the window, he saw her holding the canoe close to her chest, like a memory she'd thought she lost. And under the porch light, Finn's little fox carving hung from a string, swaying in the breeze, its tail arched, brave and unfinished, just like their story. The morning of the Woodcraft Fair arrived with the scent of sawdust and cinnamon in the air. Booths lined the sunlit park near Lake Eola, each one alive with color, laughter, and the hum of carving tools at work. Caleb arrived early, not in a suit, but in jeans and a flannel shirt that hadn't seen daylight in years. It felt unfamiliar, but right. He spotted Finn under a striped tent, stacking his creations on a fold-out table. Small animals, boats, and one centerpiece, an unfinished chair, delicate and curved, with thin, uneven legs. "That's new?" Caleb said, stepping closer. Finn turned, smiling wide. "Started it last night. Still working on the backrest. Want to help?" Caleb hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah." Finn nodded, already handing him a chisel. "You carve better than I thought." They worked side by side, the sound of scraping wood like a quiet rhythm between them. Maya arrived minutes later, carrying juice boxes and a roll of blue ribbon. Caleb glanced at her, and she gave a slight nod. Not approval, but maybe trust. It was a start. "You two have a name for the booth?" she asked, arranging Finn's display. "Yeah," Finn grinned. "Little Legends." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That yours?" "Caleb said it yesterday when I finished the fox," Finn replied. "Said every carving has a story. So, I made it our name." Caleb looked up, startled, but proud. The fair began to buzz as the families trickled in. Judges in polo shirts strolled from tent to tent, jotting notes on clipboards. Finn stood straighter when they passed, his hands behind his back like a little businessman. Then, from across the fair, a deep voice called out, "Caleb?" He turned. Ruth. Draped in pearls, clutching her designer purse, Ruth cut across the grass like she owned it. "What are you doing here?" Caleb asked, instantly on edge. "I could ask you the same," she sniffed. "Playing house with your past?" Maya stepped closer, instinctively standing in front of Finn. Caleb spoke low. "Leave." "I won't let you throw everything away for this." Her eyes darted to Maya. "She's not your future." "No," Caleb said, voice tightening. "She's my truth." Ruth stepped forward, eyes sharp. "You think the board won't notice your absence? You think your investors will approve of this distraction?" "I think they'll notice when the man they bet on starts becoming human again," he said. "And maybe that's worth more." Ruth scoffed. "You're being foolish." Caleb stepped even closer. "You lied to me. You took Maya's letters. You told her I wanted nothing to do with her or the baby." A few heads turned. Ruth stiffened. "I did what I had to do," she said through clenched teeth. "You were young, reckless. You had no business with a child. You would have ruined everything we built." "I was building someone else's dream," Caleb said. "Now I want my own." Ruth looked at Finn, then back at Caleb. "He's not your legacy." "No," Caleb said softly. "He's my son." Silence rippled around the booth. Maya's breath caught. Finn froze, chisel in hand. The boy looked between them, wide-eyed. "You're... my dad?" Caleb's voice broke. "Yeah, kid. I think I am." Finn's lip trembled. Why didn't you come before? I didn't know, Caleb said, stepping closer, but I'm here now. Finn looked down, then reached for the tiny chair. He placed it in Caleb's hands. Then finish this with me. Caleb blinked, holding the fragile frame. You sure? Finn nodded. It's for our booth, for our story. Maya stood quietly, tears lining her lashes, but she didn't stop them this time. And as the sun climbed higher, Caleb and Finn bent over the tiny chair, two sets of hands shaping wood, memory, and maybe redemption. Caleb sat on the edge of the porch steps, Finn's tiny chair beside him, sunlight catching the smooth grain. The fair had ended hours ago, but the image of Finn holding the ribbon, third place, but proud as a champion, was burned into his mind. Inside the house, Maya was putting away dishes. The clink of ceramic echoed softly through the open window. Finn ran up with a sketchbook in hand, breathless. Hey, look at this. Caleb smiled. Let me guess. Another fox? Nope, Finn said, flipping to the latest page. It's us, at the booth. I drew you carving with me. The drawing was rough, crayon lines overlapping, but the figures were unmistakable. One tall, one small, both bent over a chair with curved legs. Caleb's throat tightened. You're good at this. Finn shrugged. Mom says I see people the way I want them to be. Caleb looked at the boy. How do you see me? Finn hesitated. Different from before. You don't seem like someone who leaves. That hit harder than anything Ruth had said. I want to stay, Caleb said quietly. Even if you're rich and busy? Finn asked. Caleb nodded. Especially then. From the doorway, Maya watched in silence. She crossed her arms, then called, Dinner's ready! They sat around the tiny kitchen table, the three of them. Caleb said grace, stumbling through it, and Finn giggled when he forgot the last line. After dinner, Maya poured tea while Caleb cleared the plates. You're different now, she said, her voice low. I feel different, he replied. She studied him. Is it guilt? Or something deeper? Caleb leaned against the counter. It's regret. Regret for walking away, for believing Ruth over my own heart, and it's hope, because this time I'm not going anywhere. Maya nodded slowly. He's getting attached. Don't hurt him. I won't. She hesitated. Ruth called me again today. His jaw clenched. What did she say? She offered me money, told me to disappear with Finn, said it's best for your image. Caleb stepped closer. That ends now. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to Ruth's number, and deleted it. Then, without a word, he placed the phone face down on the table. I'm not running anymore, he said, and I won't let her keep controlling my life. Finn entered the room again, holding a new piece of wood. Can we carve tonight? Caleb glanced at Maya. She gave a slight nod. Sure, he said. Let's do it on the porch. Under the porch light, they worked together. Caleb showed Finn how to sand the corners, how to hold the chisel firm but not forceful. They laughed when Finn dropped a shaving in his juice cup. Dad, Finn said suddenly, without looking up, do you think you'll still come around after this week? Caleb froze. I mean, Finn continued, after the fair and all. Some people only show up for the big stuff. Caleb set down his tool. I'm not just here for one weekend, kid. I want to be here for all of it. Practice days, rainy days, mess-ups. Finn looked at him, eyes unsure. Even boring days? Especially boring days, Caleb said, ruffling his hair. A quiet moment passed between them. Then Finn whispered, Okay, just don't leave again. Caleb reached over, brushing wood dust from the boy's cheek. I promise. Inside the house, Maya sat by the window, watching them. Her fingers traced the edge of a photo frame, an old picture of her and Caleb, taken before everything fell apart. She stood, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folded envelope. It was the first letter she'd sent after Finn was born. Never mailed. She opened it now. Dear Caleb, I hope someday you find your way back. He has your eyes. She folded it again, and for the first time didn't feel like she needed to send it. Because this time, he had found his way home. It was Sunday morning when the truth came crashing down. Caleb sat on the front steps of the little blue house, sipping lukewarm coffee. Finn was asleep inside, curled up next to a sketchbook filled with tool designs. Maya stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself, gaze lost somewhere beyond the trees. He talks about you all the time now, she said softly, even when you're not here. Caleb looked up, heart heavy. I never asked. Why didn't you tell me? I mean, really tell me. Show up. Confront me. Maya hesitated, then lowered herself onto the step beside him. Because Ruth came first. He turned, brows furrowing. She found me, after I mailed the third letter, Maya said. Came to the apartment. Said you were doing well. Said you didn't want kids. That you'd pay me to disappear. Caleb blinked, stunned. She bribed you? No, Maya said. She threatened me. Said if I tried to trap you, she'd take him from me. Said the Dunns had lawyers on speed dial. That I didn't stand a chance. Caleb's jaw tensed. That's not who I am. I know, she said, but I didn't know it back then. They sat in silence as a breeze stirred the porch chimes, one of them shaped like a tiny wooden boat. She got to me, Caleb, Maya whispered, and I let her. Caleb stood slowly. Then I need to make this right. He drove straight to his mansion. The house that once felt like a monument now felt like a cage. Ruth was in the sunroom, flipping through real estate journals like it was just another day. I want the truth, Caleb said, voice sharp. Every letter, every lie. Ruth barely blinked. I protected you. You sabotaged me, he fired back. You took a future that wasn't yours to decide. She stood, lifting her chin. She would have derailed your career, and that child, a scandal. He's my son, Caleb said, breathing hard, and he's the best thing I've ever found. Ruth narrowed her eyes. So now what? You're giving it all up for a kid with a carving knife and a woman you barely know anymore? I know enough, he said, and I know what you did. He pulled a thick envelope from his coat, copies of the postmarked letters Maya had kept. She showed me everything. Ruth paled. You burned the bridge between us, Ruth. I'm rebuilding it. Without you, she scoffed. You wouldn't dare. I already did, he said, and walked away. Back at the blue house, Finn was outside, sitting cross-legged in the dirt with a piece of driftwood. Caleb crouched beside him. What you working on? He asked. Finn shrugged. Not sure yet. Just cutting till it feels right. Caleb nodded. That's how some of the best ideas start. Finn paused. Are you mad at Grandma Ruth? Caleb looked at the boy's wide eyes and sighed. No, just disappointed. She said you hated kids, Finn said quietly. Is that true? Caleb's heart sank. No, Finn, I didn't know about you. If I had, I would have moved mountains to be in your life. Finn stared down at the wood. Okay, Caleb asked. Finn nodded, then handed him the carving. It was a tiny birdhouse, unfinished, but already taking shape. You can help me finish it, Finn said, if you want. Caleb smiled, brushing sawdust from the edges. I'd be honored. From the window, Maya watched the two of them. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Caleb at 25, standing next to her, grinning, sawdust in his hair. She slipped it into a new frame. Something in her chest, quiet and aching, finally began to loosen. And outside, a father and son carved their next chapter together, piece by piece, one honest cut at a time. The backyard felt different now. Where weeds once ruled, Caleb and Finn had cleared space for something new. A workbench made from repurposed wood, a shelf for carving tools, and a tarp strung between two trees. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Finn wiped sweat from his forehead, then grinned. "Mom says we made it look like a real workshop." Caleb smiled. "She's right. This is where the real masterpieces will start." Finn held up a chunk of cedar. "Want to carve together again?" "Absolutely," Caleb said, grabbing his chisel. They worked in silence for a while, the sound of scraping and sanding filling the summer air. Then Finn spoke, voice hesitant. "Do you ever miss being rich?" Caleb blinked. "What makes you think I'm not still rich?" Finn shrugged. "You don't act like a rich guy anymore. You're here all the time. You wear flannel shirts. You eat cereal with us." Caleb laughed. "Maybe I'm richer now than I ever was." Finn tilted his head. "That's cheesy." "Yeah," Caleb said, "but true." From the kitchen window, Maya watched them. She'd seen the shift, not just in Caleb, but in Finn. The boy smiled more, laughed louder, slept easier. And Caleb, he wasn't the polished CEO anymore. He was something better, present. Later that evening, Maya stepped onto the porch with lemonade and a quiet question. "Would you be willing to help at Finn's school?" she asked. "They need volunteers for the arts program. Budget's at the mess." Caleb didn't hesitate. "Count me in. Even if it means trading a business trip for a bake sale? I've missed enough already," he said. "It's time I start showing up for the little things." The next morning, Caleb sat beside Finn at the bench, teaching him how to sketch curves before carving. Finn's lines were wobbly, but his determination was steady. "Can I ask you something?" Finn said, glancing up. "Of course." "Why didn't you come find us sooner?" Caleb exhaled. "Because I didn't know, and because I let someone else's voice get louder than my own." Finn nodded slowly. "I'm glad you're here now." Caleb reached over and tapped Finn's drawing. "This one's special. What's it for?" Finn grinned. "A surprise." He wouldn't say more, but he hid the drawing in his backpack like it was treasure. That afternoon, while Finn was at school, Caleb invited Maya to walk with him through the old side of town. They passed shuttered storefronts, peeling murals, broken benches. "I want to do something here," he said, stopping beside an abandoned hardware store. "Something for kids like Finn, like I used to be." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "A real workshop, community space. Tools, lessons, mentors, a place to create." Her expression softened. "That sounds beautiful." He looked at her. "Would you help me lead it?" She didn't answer at first. Then she smiled. "Only if I get to veto your interior design choices." He laughed. "Deal." That night, Finn ran up to Caleb, practically bursting with excitement. "Look what I made!" He held up a drawing. Detailed, full of color. It showed a large room filled with benches, tools, and kids carving side by side. Above the door was a hand-painted sign. Finn's Corner. Caleb stared at it, moved beyond words. "This is what you meant?" he asked. Finn nodded. "I want other kids to have a place to build stuff too." Caleb knelt beside him. "Then let's build it together." Maya stepped into the doorway, watching them. And just like that, beneath a homemade tarp and scattered wood shavings, a new chapter had already begun. Not in boardrooms, not with contracts, but in the way a boy handed his father a dream on paper and believed he'd carry it forward. Caleb's days were now filled with sawdust, sketches, and Finn's laughter echoing through the backyard. The new community space, still just an idea on paper, was beginning to take root. But behind the smiles, a quiet storm was brewing. One afternoon, while Finn was at school, Caleb stopped by the post office to check a P.O. box he hadn't used in years. He rarely got mail there anymore, but something about that old key had tugged at him. Inside, he found an envelope, no stamp, no return address. He opened it on the sidewalk. Inside were photocopies, legal filings. Caleb's name was on them. So was Finn's. At the bottom, in heavy black ink, a name he hadn't expected: Ruth Dunn. His hands shook as he scanned the text. Petition for emergency guardianship. Motion to block parental visitation. Statement claiming Caleb was emotionally unstable and reckless. He staggered back, heart pounding. She was trying to take Finn from him. That night, Caleb sat at Maya's kitchen table, the documents spread before them. Maya read every word slowly, then looked up, stunned. She filed this weeks ago. Caleb nodded. Probably before the fair, before she knew I wouldn't back down. Maya clenched her fists. This is vicious. She wants control, Caleb said. She thinks if she can make me look unfit, she can sever this bond before it becomes permanent. Maya whispered, or before we become a family again. They sat in silence, the gravity of it sinking in. Finn came in moments later, dragging his backpack and a wood-chip-covered hoodie. What's going on? Caleb quickly folded the papers, offering a smile. Just grown-up stuff, bud. Nothing to worry about. Finn stared at him. You look worried. Caleb softened. I'm okay. I just need to figure out how to protect what matters. Finn walked over to the shelf and pulled down a box. From inside, he took out the tiny chair they'd carved together, the one he hadn't finished painting. He handed it to Caleb. You can hold on to this tonight, in case you forget what matters. Caleb's throat tightened. Thanks, buddy. That chair, light as it was, felt like 1,000 pounds in his hands, a reminder of what he'd almost lost, and what he'd fight for. The next morning, Caleb met with a family attorney downtown, a kind woman named Elena who listened carefully and didn't flinch when he mentioned Ruth's name. She's known for intimidation tactics, Elena said, but she has no legal standing to pursue this unless the biological mother supports her. She won't, Caleb said firmly. Maya would never. Still, Elena continued, if this escalates, we need a paper trail, proof of paternity, letters of intent, and witnesses to your active role in Finn's life. I'll get everything you need. Elena nodded. And Caleb, prepare yourself. Ruth won't back down easily. She's playing for legacy, not love. That night, Caleb and Maya sat together on the porch, the tiny wooden chair between them. The air smelled like rain, and the cicadas hummed low in the trees. She'll come after us harder now, Caleb said quietly. Maya looked at him, strong and steady. Then we stand together. Caleb glanced inside, where Finn was at the table drawing something new. Big windows, wooden beams, a sign above the door. Finn's Corner, it read. Caleb smiled through the ache in his chest. He's got dreams bigger than any courtroom. Then we protect those dreams, Maya whispered. And under that porch light, Caleb made a silent vow he would not lose again, not to fear, not to bloodlines, not to the woman who tore the past apart. Because this time, he was carving a future, with his hands, his heart, and his son's tiny wooden chair at the center of it all. The next morning, Caleb stood at the edge of the empty lot 2 blocks from Finn's school, sunlight filtering through the moss-draped oaks. The city had auctioned it off years ago, but the project fell through. The foundation was cracked. The weeds were high. But to Caleb, it looked like possibility. He dialed a number from memory. Davis, I'm calling in that favor. I need permits, cleanup crew, and a backhoe by Monday. Another luxury condo? Davis asked. No, Caleb said, smiling. A wood shop. For kids. That afternoon, he showed Maya the blueprints. Hand-drawn, raw, but full of promise. Finn's corner, just like he imagined it. Maya traced the shape of the wide front doors. "You're serious about this?" "As serious as I've ever been," Caleb said, "but I need to step back from some things to make room for this." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I canceled the deal in Chicago, walked away from $50 million. Maya's eyes widened. "Why?" Caleb looked toward the window, where Finn sat carving at the kitchen table. "Because I'd rather build something for him than build another high-rise I'll never visit." Later that night, Finn stood beside Caleb in the dusty lot, his sneakers sinking into the soft earth. "This where it's gonna be?" Finn asked. Caleb nodded. "Right here, your first workshop." Finn grinned. "Can we put a snack shelf in it?" Caleb laughed. "You bet." He pulled out 2 pieces of wood and handed one to Finn. "Let's mark it. First cuts." They both knelt, carving initials into the ground beam, FD and CD. A few days later, the community buzzed with activity. Volunteers painted, swept, and planted herbs by the window boxes. Caleb walked from station to station. No suit, no clipboard, just a man with rolled sleeves and sawdust in his beard. But behind the scenes, Ruth wasn't done. She'd filed for an emergency hearing, fast-tracking the custody petition. The date landed on the same week as the center's opening. Caleb sat across from his attorney, face drawn. "They want to challenge paternity?" he asked. "No," Elena said. "They're using your past. Workaholic reputation, bachelor lifestyle, even a tabloid from 5 years ago." Caleb shook his head. "And she's doing it to stop this, all of it." "She's afraid of what it means if you choose purpose over profit," Elena said, "because that makes you powerful in a different way." Caleb exhaled. "Then we finish the center now. No delays." That evening he found Finn sitting on the porch, chin resting on his hands. "You okay, buddy?" Finn looked up. "You're really going to leave that job stuff behind?" "I am." "What if people think that's weird?" Caleb smiled. "Sometimes doing the right thing does look weird, but that doesn't mean it's wrong." Finn hesitated, then reached into his backpack. "I've been working on something." He pulled out a new carving. Small, rough, but beautiful. A wooden key with the initials FC etched into the bow. "For the front door," Finn said. "To your shop. To our shop." Caleb took it gently, eyes stinging. "I'll never lose this." The next day, instead of flying to New York to defend a property deal, Caleb walked into City Hall and handed over a check, his own money, to fund the last phase of the center. That same afternoon, a new sign went up on the lot, painted by Maya and a few neighborhood kids. Finn's Corner, where little hands build big dreams. And nailed beside it, just beneath the welcome sign, was Finn's carved key. A symbol of a father's promise, of a child's vision, of a family finally choosing to build, not escape. And they weren't done carving. Not yet. The night before the court hearing, the air felt heavy. Caleb sat alone in the nearly finished workshop, the smell of fresh pine clinging to the beams. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting soft shadows across the sawdust-covered floor. Beside him sat the tiny wooden chair, Finn's gift. A seat he hadn't earned, not fully, but one he was determined to be worthy of. The door creaked open. Maya stepped in, her arms crossed, but her expression soft. "I figured you'd be here," she said. Caleb glanced up. "Couldn't sleep." She walked over, brushing sawdust off the edge of the chair. "Neither could Finn. He said he wants to come to court with us." Caleb shook his head gently. "He shouldn't have to. He's just a kid." Maya sat beside him. "He's not just a kid. He's your kid, and he knows what's at stake." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing close. Then Maya turned toward him. "You've changed, Caleb." He looked down. "I just found something that matters more than winning." She smiled softly. "And I see it in the way Finn looks at you now." The next morning, sunlight spilled through the courtroom windows, warm but sterile. Ruth arrived first, dressed in navy silk, her expression polished and unreadable. She didn't acknowledge Caleb or Maya. The judge was firm but fair, flipping through the file as both attorneys stated their positions. Ruth's lawyer began. Mr. Dunn has a history of absenteeism, of putting his career over personal relationships. My client believes he is unfit to parent a child full-time. Elena rose. Mr. Dunn was unaware of the child's existence due to deliberate obstruction. Since learning the truth, he's remained involved, emotionally, physically, and financially. He walked away from a multi-million-dollar deal to support this child's development. The judge turned to Caleb. Do you wish to make a statement? Caleb stood. His voice was steady, but every word carried weight. I didn't get to see Finn take his first steps, or hear his first laugh. I didn't get to teach him how to hold a carving knife, but I've seen the way his hands work, the way he lights up when he builds something with his own two hands. He looked over at Ruth. I spent my life building towers for strangers, while the thing I should have been building was family. Then his voice softened. He gave me a chair, this small, hand-carved chair. He said it was mine. If I stayed, and I am staying, no matter what. A hush fell over the courtroom. The judge leaned forward. And the child's mother? Maya stood. I believe in Caleb, and more importantly, so does Finn. The judge nodded. Then I see no reason to restrict visitation or involvement. Mr. Dunn, you may remain an active parent, but I advise all parties to keep the child's well-being above all else. Ruth's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Outside the courthouse, Finn sat on a bench with a book in his lap. When he saw them, he ran forward, eyes wide. Well? Caleb knelt down. I'm not going anywhere, Bud. It's official. Finn's grin exploded. Yes. He pulled something from his backpack and handed it to Caleb. Another chair, this one smaller, painted bright blue, and on the backrest carefully etched, for Dad, because you stayed. Caleb swallowed hard, cradling it in both hands. Maya looked on, her eyes full of tears, but this time they were soft, healing. Later that afternoon, they brought the new chair to the workshop. It sat beside the first one, under a window where sunlight poured in. 2 chairs, 2 beginnings. One made in hope, the other made in trust. The morning sun slanted through the high windows of the nearly finished workshop, catching on the sawdust suspended in the air like gold dust. Finn stood by the front table, paintbrush in hand, dabbing soft green across the tiny legs of a new miniature chair. Caleb watched from the doorway, coffee cooling in his hand. That one's looking sharp, he said. Finn grinned. It's for the welcome shelf. Gonna be the first thing people see when they walk in. Caleb stepped closer. Why, chairs. Finn shrugged. People don't notice chairs, but when one's missing, you feel it. Caleb nodded, struck silent by the wisdom in that. You think I was a missing chair? Finn looked up. You were, but now you're the one building them. Maya entered carrying a box of donated tools. She set it down with a soft thud. We got a dozen chisels, a new lathe, and some carving knives, dull but usable. Caleb smiled. We'll sharpen them. She pulled out a crumpled flyer from her back pocket. And we're on the school's newsletter. Grand opening of Finn's Corner, Saturday at 10. Think you'll survive the crowd? Barely, Caleb said, chuckling. But that's the plan. That evening, as twilight draped the backyard, Caleb and Maya sat together on the steps. Finn was inside, singing to himself while brushing polish onto his wooden key display. Caleb stared out at the stars blinking into view. There's something about building something small, something with your hands. That's healing. Maya glanced at him. Like forgiveness? He nodded. And purpose. She leaned her shoulder gently against his. And love? Caleb looked at her. Especially that. A long pause stretched between them, easy and warm. Then Maya said, "Finn's been sleeping with both chairs by his bed, yours and his." Caleb chuckled. "Yeah? He says one's to remember how far you've come, and one's in case you ever forget." Caleb's throat tightened. The next day, as final touches were being made to the shop's interior, Finn ran in holding a sealed envelope. "I found this in the mailbox," he said, handing it to Caleb. Caleb opened it slowly. Inside was a thick document. No return address, but the notary's seal was clear. It was a relinquishment. Ruth had withdrawn her petition. No fight, no appeal. Just one handwritten note at the bottom. "Let the boy have what I couldn't give you. Freedom to love without terms." Our Caleb sat down, stunned. Maya read it over his shoulder. "She's stepping away?" "Looks like it," he said quietly. Maybe she finally saw what matters." Finn peeked at the paper. "Does this mean we don't have to worry anymore?" Caleb smiled, pulling him into a hug. "It means we get to just be." That night, they moved the two tiny chairs, Caleb's and Finn's, to the front window of the shop. On a custom shelf, lit by soft golden bulbs, the chairs sat side by side. Below them, a plaque read, "Seats of Redemption, built with trust." And behind those chairs, inside walls painted with color and hope, a new legacy began to take shape. No boardroom, no skyscraper, just a father, a son, and the quiet power of something carved with love. The night before the grand opening, Caleb stood in the quiet workshop, running his hand along the smooth edge of Finn's carved welcome sign. The words "Finn's Corner" glowed faintly under the amber light etched into reclaimed oak. He exhaled, steady but heavy. A soft knock on the glass. Maya. She pushed the door open, her expression unreadable. In her hand, a manila envelope. "What's that?" Caleb asked, walking over. She held it out slowly. "Something you need to see." Inside were legal transcripts dated 3 months ago. At the top, Ruth Dunn, Vriesen Maya Fisher, filed before Caleb knew about Finn. One line stood out. "Plaintiff requests all visitation rights be denied to Mr. Caleb Dunn in the event of paternity revelation." Caleb blinked. "She filed this before she even told me?" Maya nodded. "She was planning to block you permanently. She even had an attorney on retainer." He gripped the paper tighter. "And I thought she let go willingly. She only withdrew after realizing she'd lost control, not out of love, out of strategy." Caleb sat down on the workbench, the truth cutting deeper than any blade. "She was going to erase me." Maya stepped closer. "But she didn't. And you're here. You changed everything." Caleb looked up. "But how do I explain this to Finn? That someone from our own family nearly stole our chance?" She paused. "With honesty, with grace, and with that chair." He turned, eyes landing on the small painted chair by the window, the one Finn had labeled Dad's Place. The next morning, the sun rose warm and golden. The sidewalk outside the shop bustled with families, kids holding painted signs, neighbors carrying pies and lemonade. Caleb stood by the door, trying to smile, but the weight of that envelope still tugged at his chest. Then Finn came barreling out from the back room. "Dad, come quick! You gotta see what I made!" Caleb followed him through the hallway, past the tool racks to the side gallery, newly built for displaying kids' projects. In the middle stood a tall carving, a bench, hand-sanded, etched with 3 names, Finn, Maya, Caleb. Below that, in Finn's crooked lettering, "No one sits alone anymore." Caleb's voice caught. "You did this?" Finn nodded, proud. "I want people to know we're a team now, that no matter who walks in, they've got a place." Maya stepped beside them, resting a hand on Finn's shoulder. That's your legacy, Caleb. Not Ruth's schemes, not your old deals. This. Outside, the ribbon cutting began. Mayor, principal, neighbors, all cheering. But Caleb held back. He knelt beside Finn. Hey, before we go out there, there's something I need to tell you. Finn looked up, curious. Remember when I said I didn't know about you because of a mistake? Yeah? It wasn't just a mistake, Caleb said gently. Someone in our family tried to keep us apart. They thought they were protecting me, but it wasn't right. Finn blinked. Was it Grandma Ruth? Caleb hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Finn was quiet. Then he asked, Is she still trying to stop us? Caleb shook his head. No, she gave up. But I wanted you to know the truth, because you deserve honesty. Finn shrugged. She was wrong. But we're good now, right? Caleb smiled, emotion catching in his throat. Yeah, buddy, we're good. Minutes later, Caleb stood between Maya and Finn as the ribbon was cut, applause filling the air. Balloons rose, kids rushed in, the scent of fresh wood mingled with lemonade and hope. And inside, on the display shelf by the front window, 2 tiny chairs sat side by side. One for the past. One for the promise. And beside them, the new bench, wide enough for a family. Carved not just with names, but with forgiveness, faith, and a future no one could steal. The days after the grand opening felt like magic. Each morning, the sound of kids laughing mixed with the rhythmic tapping of hammers and chisels. Finn's Corner wasn't just a workshop anymore. It was a living heartbeat. Families came by after school, teens showed up early, and even a few retired veterans stopped in, offering to teach whittling and joinery. Caleb stood near the back wall one afternoon, adjusting shelves with a cordless drill, when a soft voice caught his ear. Mr. Dunn, do you still need someone to run Saturday classes? He turned to see a teenage girl, maybe 16, holding a sketchbook tight to her chest. Her fingers were stained with pencil and glue. Caleb smiled. What's your name? Amira, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I like to design furniture. Tiny stuff, mostly. He motioned her in. Come show me what you've made. She opened her book to reveal delicate blueprints, miniature chairs, doll-sized rockers, a tiny roll-top desk no bigger than a lunchbox. They were detailed, precise, and beautiful. Caleb crouched beside her. You know, I've seen a lot of things come through here, but I've never seen lines that speak like these. She lit up. Really, he said. How would you feel about running a design corner for kids? I'll supply the tools. You bring the vision. She nodded quickly, eyes welling up. No one's ever trusted me like that. Now, someone does. Later that week, Caleb invited a few local reporters for a tour. Maya handled logistics, and Finn, now proudly wearing a staff apron, led the group through the building. This is where we keep scrapwood. Over there is the carving station. And this, he said, pointing to a corner wall filled with framed drawings, is the legacy wall. Everyone gets to add something they made. The reporters asked about the name. Why call it Finn's Corner? Caleb stepped in then, clearing his throat. Because this place started with one boy's imagination. He gave me a second chance to be a father. I figured the least I could do was give back. That night, Maya and Caleb stood alone inside the shop after closing. Have you thought about expanding? She asked, wiping down a table. Not yet, he said. Feels good just to get this one right. She smiled. It's more than right. It's what this community needed. He paused. Funny thing is, I thought I was the one saving something. She looked up. And I think it saved me. The next morning, Caleb arrived early and unlocked the door. Taped to the glass was a child's crayon drawing. 3 chairs in a circle, each one labeled Mom, Dad, me. No signature, just the word home scrawled in block letters underneath. He left it there. The next week, the center partnered with the local school district. Field trips came through. Teachers asked for summer programs. Kids who used to wander the streets now sat cross-legged on the floor, sanding, sketching, or painting. Caleb walked through the building one afternoon and stopped by the bench Finn had made, the one etched with all three of their names. He ran his hand over the carving, smiling. Maya walked in behind him, holding a clipboard. "We've got 3 new sign-ups for the Saturday session, and the principal from Lakeview wants to bring her whole 4th grade class." Caleb turned, beaming. "We'll need more chairs." Finn darted in then, waving a fresh carving. "Look what I made, Dad!" It was a new design, a curved rocking chair with tiny initials on the backrest. FMC. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "What's that stand for?" Finn grinned. "Finn, Maya, Caleb. It's for the front porch, for all of us." Caleb's eyes misted. "Then we better build a porch worthy of it." And that night, under the soft glow of the workshop lights, they began drawing up plans, not just for new chairs, but for the life they'd continue carving together. From loss came purpose. From pain came design. And from one small wooden chair, a whole community found its seat. The smell of sawdust mingled with kettle corn as families poured into the city fairgrounds. Booths lined the path, face painters, candied apples, handmade crafts. But the biggest crowd gathered at a cedar-paneled tent beneath a banner that read, "Finn's Corner Live Carving Demo." Inside, Finn stood proudly beside his workbench, a small mallet in hand, chip curls gathering at his feet. On one side of him sat Maya, smoothing sandpaper over a delicate frame. On the other, Caleb, wearing an apron that said, "Just a Dad with a Chisel," carved with calm, focused hands. The crowd leaned in. "This piece is for our new reading corner at the shop," Finn announced, voice steady over the hum. "It's a bench, but also a bookshelf, and also a hug." Laughter and applause. Caleb glanced over, his eyes full of pride. "Taught by the best," he said, motioning to Finn. Someone from the crowd called out, "Are you the real Caleb Dunn, the CEO?" He stood straight, wiped his hands on his apron. "Used to be. Now I just build benches with my son." Soft murmurs turned to cheers. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned orange, the trio packed up the tent. Maya folded up the tablecloth while Finn carefully cradled the bench they'd carved together. 3 interlocking chairs with curved arms, etched with leaves and stars. "You think we can put this in the window?" Finn asked. "Front and center," Caleb said, brushing sawdust from the edges. As they walked toward the exit, they passed a quieter part of the fair. A woman sat alone on a wooden bench beneath a sycamore tree. Ruth. Older now, thinner, not polished, not sharp, just tired. Caleb paused. "I'll catch up," he told Maya and Finn. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "Didn't expect to see you here." She didn't look up. "I wasn't planning to come. Just wanted to see if it was real." He nodded. "It is." A long pause. "I was wrong," she said finally, voice barely audible. "I thought keeping you from that boy would protect you. From disappointment. From mistakes." Caleb's voice stayed even. "You took away 10 years. I know." Silence hung. Then he said, "But we're here now, and we built something better than anything I ever had." Ruth looked up, tears in her eyes. "Is there a place for me?" Caleb glanced toward the carving Finn held. 3 chairs, curved arms, no gaps. He met her gaze. "There's always room, Ruth, but this time, it's earned." She nodded, a flicker of peace crossing her face. Later that night, back at home, the trio gathered on the porch of Caleb's once lonely mansion, now lit with wind chimes, planters, and tiny hand-painted signs. Finn placed the interlocking bench in the corner of the yard under a string of warm bulbs. "It's our story, right?" he asked. "3 chairs, but connected." Caleb put an arm around his shoulders. "Exactly that." Maya leaned in. "What should we call it?" Finn grinned. "The family seat." And as fireflies danced in the summer air, the 3 of them sat down. No fanfare, no audience, just love carved into every grain of wood beneath them. From pain came beauty. From silence, laughter. And from a boy's bold voice yelling, "Dad, look!" a family was formed stronger than oak. They didn't just build furniture. They built each other.